Hey everybody. I just wanted to make a hopefully quick follow-up video to section 4.5 that maybe you can even do, the day after. You don't need to do it like right in succession, but the main reason is there's at least one other little plot twist or a couple little teaching points that I wanted to address and then overall just kind of review the process, right? So, number one, an example like number one, I tried to kind of include all the different things that can be thrown at you, not literally everything, but anyway. Um, this quadratic equation, you cannot just get x by itself, so we want to factor. And before I go on here, if you want to grab some separate paper and pause the video every now and then and kind of try all these on your own before I go ahead and walk you through it, that'd be tremendous. So feel free to pause whenever and try this on your own and stuff. You know what I mean? As like a bell ringer kind of deal. But number one, you would proceed to factor because it's already equal to 0. Remember, the basic steps of solving a quadratic power 2 equation is to make sure it's equal to 0, and then once that is true, then you can factor that left side however you need to. And then after that, you would be able to set the factors equal to 0. As long as that's 0, you can take your two factors and set them equal to 0, and then you can solve from there. So how are we going to factor 4x squared plus 6x? Well, the first method we always try is what? GCF method. Is there a GCF? Yes, there is. The GCF is 2x. And when you factor that out, what you're left with is 2x plus 3 in the other factor, the bubble factor. So 4x squared, yeah. And now that we've factored, or I should probably say, hey, can we factor again? Can this bubble factor keep factoring by, unfoil? And the answer is no. So we're done factoring. That doesn't unfoil. So we're done factoring, and so now we set both factors equal to 0. The GCF factor and the bubble factor. And now we solve these separately because they're very solvable. To solve this one for x, we would divide both sides by 2. 0 divided by 2 is, of course, 0. And then here we would subtract 3. And then divide both sides by 2. And we would get exactly negative 1.5. But more often than not, you're probably going to want to just leave it as a fraction, even though it's like an exact decimal. So there's those two answers. Now, number 2, spoiler alert, pay attention or be ready for a plot twist at the end. So definitely a big reason I want to do number 2 here with you right now. First of all, it's quadratic. We cannot just get x by itself, so we want to set it equal to 0. It's not equal to 0 right away. We're going to have to move that term to the other side. Right? So now the left side, can we add 1 to anything? No, it's going to stay a separate term. So the left side becomes that, so that the other side can become 0. Now that it's equal to 0, we factor the left side. Is there a GCF? Nope. Maybe we can unfoil. which to do that, obviously, are there two numbers that multiply to get positive 1, but they add up to negative 2? Actually, there is. Negative 1 and negative 1 again. So now in the next step, when we set both factors equal to 0, here's what we end up getting. X equals 1 or x equals 1? That seems a little weird. It's because it's the same answer twice. So here's that plot twist I was warning you about, okay? This example is actually an example where there's only one solution, which is, x equals 1. There's not actually two solutions. There's only one solution because we got that same answer twice. So it is possible for a quadratic equation with a power 2 to only have one answer. Speaking of solutions and answers and stuff, here's what else I don't know if I neglected to say it in the actual 4 or 5 notes, but maybe, I'll say it now. I just want to make sure that you understand something. These two answers in this problem, this problem had two answers, but, I want you to know this. These two answers are separate answers. Separate, okay? You would not plug in both the 0 and the negative 3 halves at the same time. This answer of x equals 0 is an answer all by itself. This x equals 0, that means 4 times 0 squared plus 6 times 0 would equal 0. Just like how this answer is an answer all by itself. 4 times negative 3 halves squared plus 6 times negative 3 halves will equal 0. They're answers not together, but separate. Hope that made sense. Now number 3, okay? Dun dun dun, special case. First of all, yeah, I know, look, number 3, this actually is the type of situation, I was going to change it, but never mind, it's too late. This is the type of situation where you actually sort of can get x by itself. If you moved this term to the other side, you would have x squared equals positive 25. And now you know that you're just going to get, well, geez, 5 squared works, and so does negative 5 squared. So you kind of already know the answers probably are 5 or negative 5. But you're going to see a lot of teachers over your time kind of say to do this at this point. In order to turn an x squared, in order to solve for x and make it just x, to make an x squared into just x, what's the opposite of the second power? What's literally the opposite? Well, taking the square root. So, I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but you are actually allowed, it's a thing, to take the square root of both sides. Just like adding 5 to both sides, just like subtracting 7 from both sides, or dividing both sides by 2. You can take the square root of both sides. This just becomes an x, and I'm not going to go too deep down this rabbit hole right now, but the bottom line is you got to remember that when you do this, you do have two answers, okay, plus or minus 5. Or you could just have it equal to 0, and if it factors, it factors. This is special. Oh my gosh. I can't keep myself from doing that. Idiot. If it factors, it factors. This factors by special case unfoil. And from here you would set both of these factors equal to 0 and end up with -5 from that, or x equals +5, whatever, either way. Number 4, last but not least. First thing, okay, can you just get x by itself? Actually, you kind of can, so let's do it that way. Why not? Like, let's focus on that alternative. So in a situation like this, we actually sort of can get x by itself. So let's get this term over to the other side. So now we have 2x squared equals 24. Okay? And from here, we would divide both sides by 2, because we sort of have to get the x squared by itself before we can end up with x by itself. So we end up with x squared equals 12. Okay? From here, x squared equals 12? That's not as nice as saying like x squared equals 16 or x squared equals like 64. X squared equals 12, right? This is not going to be a nice, clean answer. Well, that's okay. So we take the square root of both sides, and we get x equals plus or minus, because remember, there's a positive answer for x, and there's also a negative answer for x. So here's what we do. The square root of 12. I know that's a nasty decimal. That's not what we're going to actually write down, okay? We're going to leave it as a square root, but we're going to simplify this if we can, all right? And the square root of 12 simplified is the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. So if we break this up, this part we can actually do, which is 2. So our final simplified answer, this is the same as saying plus or minus the square root of 12. Plus or minus 2 square root of 3. And this would be like our final 2 answers. This is 2 answers here in one, okay? Remember, simplify square roots if we can. If there was like I'm calling an audible, okay? I'm calling an audible right now. I don't care. If we had like x squared equals, I don't know, 10, right? And you had to solve this. Well, first of all, let me just say this. If you set it equal to 0, look at this. Set it equal to 0. X squared minus 10 equals 0. This doesn't factor. So you know what? We kind of have to leave it like this and take the square root of both sides. Okay. And guess what? This doesn't, not only is the square root of 10 not a nice answer the way the square root of 36 is, or the square root of 4, or the square root of 9, or the square root of 100. Not only is the square root of 10 not nice and clean, this square root doesn't even simplify like this one did. So you know what? This is what our final answer is, or answers. Plus or minus, positive or negative, the square root of 10. Okay? So there's a few more little plot twists and just kind of some elaborating on, solving these quadratic equations by factoring, or I guess taking the square root of both sides only in these situations. One more quick elaboration. You cannot solve number 1 or number 2 by taking the square root of both sides. That strategy only pertains to examples like number 3 or number 4 or number 5. Okay?